Bark like a dog. A big dog.
Woof, woof, woof.
It was supposed to be a simple comedy about an African prince finding love in America, but behind the cameras, Coming to America was anything but simple. Eddie Murphy clashed with his director, secret lawsuits nearly shut down production, and one scene was filmed illegally inside a real New York hotel. Even the iconic Soul Glow jingle has a story no one expected. 35 years later, the cast is finally revealing what really happened behind the royal laughs. These are the shocking secrets most fans never figured out. Fact 1. It was originally called The Quest. Before it became the classic Coming to America, Eddie Murphy originally pitched the film under a very different name, The Quest. The title sounded more like a medieval adventure than a comedy, but that was Murphy's vision when he first brought the idea to Paramount. He imagined a heartfelt story about a sheltered African prince who leaves his palace to find true love, not through duty or arrangement, but through genuine connection. The studio, however, wanted something lighter and more marketable. After some debate, the title was changed to Coming to America, and a comedy legend was born. Even so, The Quest perfectly reflected Murphy's original intention. Beneath the laughs and outrageous characters, he was telling a story about self-discovery, freedom, and choosing your own path, with plenty of humor along the way. Fact 2. Paramount forced a white actor into the cast. Despite Eddie Murphy's plan for an all-black cast, Paramount Pictures pushed back, insisting that at least one white actor be included to make the film more marketable to wider audiences. Murphy didn't agree with the reasoning, but played along, and personally chose comedian Louis Anderson, whom he called the funniest white guy I know. Anderson ended up playing Maurice, the upbeat McDowell's employee who proudly boasts, "He's washing lettuce now, but soon I'll be on fries." Ironically, the role that the studio forced into the movie became one of its most beloved. Maurice not only won over audiences but also became the only supporting character to return in the sequel more than 30 years later. Fact 3. The McDowell's set nearly got them sued. McDowell's, the movie's hilarious knockoff of McDonald's, turned out to be more than just a joke. It was a legal minefield. With its golden arcs instead of arches and a Big Mick instead of a Big Mac, the parody hit a little too close to home. The real McDonald's took notice and even sent corporate representatives to the set to check for trademark violations. In a panic, the production team created a fake employee manual outlining every supposed difference between McDowell's and McDonald's, right down to the sesame seeds and patty count. The quick thinking worked, and the film narrowly avoided a lawsuit. Ironically, what started as a risky parody ended up becoming a pop culture legend. Decades later, McDowell's would inspire real-life pop-ups and fan tributes, turning a potential legal disaster into one of comedy's most iconic fake restaurants. Fact 4. Eddie Murphy refused to play a character named Eddie. When Eddie Murphy first read the early drafts of the script, he couldn't believe what he saw. The main character, an African prince, was literally named Eddie. He hated the idea. By 1988, Murphy was already one of the biggest stars in the world, and the last thing he wanted was to play a version of himself. He wanted to disappear into a completely new character. So, he pushed for a change. That change gave birth to Prince Akeem of Zamunda, a polite, innocent, and soft-spoken royal, the total opposite of Murphy's usual fast-talking roles. It was a bold move that set the tone for the entire film and revealed a new side of Murphy's talent that audiences had never seen before. Fact 5. Arsenio Hall quit Ghostbusters for this role. Before Arsenio Hall became Prince Akeem's dramatic sidekick, Semmi, he was lending his voice to Winston Zeddemore in the real Ghostbusters animated series. But when Coming to America came calling, Hall didn't hesitate. He quit the cartoon job on the spot. It was a risky move, but one that changed his career forever. In the film, Hall didn't just play one role. He completely transformed into several outrageous characters, from a smooth-talking preacher to a grumpy old barber and even an unforgettable woman at the nightclub. His chemistry with Eddie Murphy was instant, and his comedic range was undeniable. Walking away from Ghostbusters might have been a gamble, but it turned Arsenio Hall into one of the breakout stars of the decade. Fact 6. John Amos got the part by threatening murder. Kind of. When John Amos found out about the role of Cleo McDowell, the proud burger-obsessed father of Lisa, he didn't bother with an audition or a demo tape. Instead, he picked up the phone and made one unforgettable call. "You try to keep me out of this movie, I'll kill you," he joked. It was all in good fun, but it did the trick. The producers knew right then that he was perfect for the part. Amos brought just the right mix of gruffness and heart to Cleo, a father more dazzled by wealth than by royal titles. His delivery, especially in the scenes where he insists McDowell's is completely different from McDonald's, became instantly iconic. That single bold joke didn't just make them laugh, it landed him one of the most memorable roles in 1980s comedy. Fact 7. Samuel L. Jackson got his start robbing McDowell's. Long before he was shouting at snakes or commanding SHIELD in the Marvel Universe, Samuel L. Jackson made one of his first big-screen appearances in Coming to America. He played the shotgun-wielding robber who storms into McDowell's shouting, "All right, everybody shut up and do what I say. Get the money out." The scene is brief, but Jackson's intensity makes it unforgettable. At the time, he was mostly known in theater circles, but that short, chaotic moment on film gave audiences their first glimpse of the raw energy and charisma that would later make him a Hollywood powerhouse. It's almost hard to believe now. The man robbing McDowell's would go on to become one of the most recognizable and celebrated stars in movie history. Fact 8. Cuba Gooding Jr.'s first movie role was a haircut. Long before shouting, "Show me the money," or winning an Oscar, Cuba Gooding Jr. made his movie debut in Coming to America, sitting quietly in a barber's chair. In the iconic barbershop scene, he appears as a silent customer getting his hair trimmed by Eddie Murphy, disguised as Clarence the barber. He doesn't speak, doesn't react, and barely moves. But that blink and you'll miss it cameo marked the beginning of an extraordinary career. At the time, Gooding Jr. was just starting out, and scoring even a tiny part in a major Eddie Murphy film was a huge break. Today, fans love spotting him during rewatch. That quiet teenager in the chair would go on to become one of the biggest stars of the 90s. Not bad for his very first haircut on camera. Fact 9. The film secretly connects to trading places. If you blink during the park scene in Coming to America, you might miss one of the greatest Easter eggs in 80s comedy. When Prince Akeem hands cash to two homeless men, it looks like a simple act of kindness. But those men are actually Randolph and Mortimer Duke, the scheming villains from Eddie Murphy's earlier hit Trading Places. In that movie, the Duke brothers lose everything after a disastrous stock market scam. Here, they show up in ragged clothes, stunned and overjoyed as Akeem gives them a wad of money, a royal bailout, quite literally. The clever cameo unofficially ties Coming to America and Trading Places into the same universe, and fans loved it. What could have been a throwaway joke became one of the most iconic crossovers in comedy history. Fact 10. Saul the Barber was based on Rick Baker's father-in-law. Saul, the elderly Jewish barber played by Eddie Murphy, remains one of the most astonishing transformations in Coming to America, and the credit goes to legendary makeup artist Rick Baker. But here's the surprise. Baker didn't create Saul entirely from scratch. He actually modeled the character's look, voice, and gestures after his own father-in-law. In some close-up shots, even the hands you see on screen aren't Murphy's. They're Baker's father-in-law's, used as hand doubles. "You should change the name outside from Mighty Sharp to the Three Puts," Saul quips in one of the film's funniest lines. The transformation was so flawless that many viewers refused to believe it was really Eddie Murphy under all that prosthetic makeup. Baker later called Saul one of his proudest achievements, a mix of expert craftsmanship, sharp comedy, and a personal family touch. Fact 11. Rick Baker made 40 different sets of teeth. To bring all the wild characters in Coming to America to life, legendary makeup artist Rick Baker went far beyond prosthetics. He created more than 40 custom sets of teeth. Each set was designed to perfectly match the personalities of Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall's many alter egos. From Randy Watson's crooked, overconfident grin to Saul the Barber's worn-down dentures, every pair told its own story. Baker even adjusted the color, shape, and gum lines to make each character feel authentic and lived in. It was a small detail with a huge impact, transforming not just how the actors looked, but how they spoke, moved, and performed. The result wasn't just great makeup. It was full character transformation, right down to the teeth. Fact 12. The mic drop. Eddie and Arsenio invented it. That unforgettable moment when Randy Watson finishes butchering the greatest love of all and drops the mic like he just owned Madison Square Garden? Completely improvised. Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall came up with the gag on the spot while filming. At the time, mic drops weren't even a recognized move, but that one moment turned it into instant comedy gold. Murphy later joked that it might have been the first mic drop ever captured in a movie. True or not, it helped make the gesture iconic. "Damn, that boy can sing," became the perfect punchline. And from that point on, the mic drop became a symbol of swagger in stand-up, rap battles, and pop culture everywhere. All thanks to Randy Watson and his unforgettable band, Sexual Chocolate. Fact 13. Hall's nightclub woman character scared his own mom. One of Arsenio Hall's most outrageous transformations in Coming to America wasn't the preacher or the barber, it was the woman. During the nightclub montage, Hall appeared in full drag as an aggressively flirty woman on the hunt for love. The transformation was so convincing that even his own mother didn't recognize him at first. When she eventually realized it was her son under all that makeup and hair, she was horrified. Hall later joked that the character bothered her more than anything else he'd ever done on screen. It was meant as a quick gag, but it ended up being almost too real, blurring the line between funny and unsettling. In a scene packed with eccentric personalities, Hall's nightclub woman stole the show for all the strangest reasons. Fact 14. Murphy improvised the clay line and made history. One of the most famous lines in Coming to America wasn't even in the script. "I ain't saying Clay ain't bad. I'm just saying I stopped liking Cassius Clay once he changed his name to Muhammad Ali." What kind of is that? During the barbershop scene, Eddie Murphy, in character as Clarence the Barber, came up with the line on the spot while arguing about Ali's name change. It was pure improvisation. He slipped effortlessly into character, delivered the line, and the crew reportedly burst out laughing behind the camera. The moment was so good, they left it in the final cut, and it went on to become one of the film's most iconic quotes. The joke even returned decades later, nearly word for word, in Coming to America. That single unscripted line turned a casual debate into comedy history. Fact 15. Nile Rodgers wrote the Soul Glow jingle. That unforgettable falsetto anthem, "Just Let Your Soul Glow," wasn't just a throwaway joke. It was actually written by music legend Nile Rodgers, the mastermind behind disco classics like Le Freak and Good Times. Rodgers was hired to create a jingle that perfectly captured the exaggerated glamour of 1980s hair commercials, and he nailed it. The vocals, performed with over-the-top passion by Christopher Max, were deliberately cheesy and dramatic, making the fake product feel hilariously real. Some viewers even believed Soul Glow was a genuine hair brand. From the dripping activator juice to the slow-motion glamour shots, every detail was spot on. Rogers later called it one of the most fun projects of his career. It might have lasted only a few seconds on screen, but the Soul Glow jingle became one of the most iconic and endlessly quoted moments in Coming to America and in comedy history itself. Fact 16. The sequel reused costumes from 30 years ago. When Coming to America premiered in 2021, the costume department didn't reinvent Zamunda's royal wardrobe, they resurrected it. Many of the original outfits worn by Eddie Murphy, Arsenio Hall, and James Earl Jones in the 1988 classic were pulled from storage, carefully restored, and brought back to life for the sequel. Oscar-winning designer Ruth E. Carter made subtle updates to the pieces but kept the essence intact: the gold embroidery, luxurious fabrics, and intricate patterns that defined Zamundan royalty. It wasn't just a nod to nostalgia. It was a tribute to the timeless craftsmanship of the original film. More than 30 years later, those same robes and crowns still looked majestic. Proof that true style, like Coming to America itself, never goes out of fashion. Fact 17. Murphy didn't enjoy working with John Landis. Eddie Murphy brought back director John Landis to lead Coming to America, hoping to recreate the magic of their earlier hit, Trading Places. But this time, things were very different. When they first worked together, Murphy was a rising star. By 1988, he was one of Hollywood's most powerful figures, and the balance between actor and director had completely shifted. Tension surfaced almost immediately. Landis reportedly treated Murphy the same way he had years earlier, and the now-established superstar didn't take it lightly. Their disagreements became frequent, and the mood on set grew strained. Murphy later admitted that working with Landis on Coming to America was one of the least enjoyable experiences of his career. Still, despite the friction, the two managed to finish the film and create a comedy classic. They reunited years later for Beverly Hills Cop 3, but by then, their partnership had lost its spark, and the easy camaraderie they once shared was gone for good. Fact 18. They had to sneak a shot at the Waldorf Astoria. When Prince Akeem and Semi first arrive at the elegant Waldorf Astoria Hotel, the moment feels seamless on screen, but behind the scenes, it was pure chaos. Remember, Semi, no one here can know I am royalty. You must appear to be no different than the average man. I will not say a word. The truth was, the Coming to America crew didn't have official permission to film at the famous hotel, so they went guerrilla style. With a tiny crew and minimal equipment, they rushed in, rolled the cameras, captured the scene, and got out before anyone could stop them. It was a bold gamble, especially at such a high-profile, heavily guarded location, but it worked. The footage was too good to cut, and it added an unmistakable sense of realism to Akeem's grand arrival. In a movie filled with fantasy and royal splendor, that unsanctioned moment brought a touch of real New York magic. Sometimes, even in Hollywood, a king has to sneak in like everyone else. Fact 19. It's now preserved in the National Film Registry. In 2021, Coming to America earned one of the greatest honors in film history, a place in the U.S. National Film Registry. Each year, the Library of Congress selects movies considered culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant, and Eddie Murphy's royal comedy proudly joined the list. That means Prince Akeem, McDowell's, Soul Glow, and even Randy Watson are now part of America's permanent cultural legacy. More than just a box office hit, Coming to America broke barriers and redefined what a black-led comedy could be. It inspired filmmakers, bridged cultures, and created a fictional kingdom that audiences around the world still believe in. Decades later, it's not just a movie, it's a crown jewel of American cinema. Fact 20. McDowell's became real, briefly. For years, fans joked about wanting to eat at McDowell's, the fake fast food joint from Coming to America. Then, in 2017, That fantasy finally came to life. Sort of. A Chicago restaurant called the Wiener's Circle teamed up with a marketing agency to turn their place into a full-fledged McDowell's pop-up for Halloween. They didn't just hang a new sign, they recreated everything. Staff wore McDowell's uniforms, the walls were lined with photos of Zamundan royalty, and the menu featured Big Mix, fries, and even sexual chocolate shakes. The event was such a hit that lines wrapped around the block, and it returned the following year by popular demand. Even Eddie Murphy himself heard about it, and gave it his blessing, laughing at the idea that his parody had come full circle. For one unforgettable weekend in Chicago, movie fans got to step inside the world of Zamunda, one Big Mick at a time. Fact 21. Legendary producer's proudest moment was a fake ad. When Nile Rodgers calls the Soul Glow jingle his proudest musical achievement, it sounds like a joke, but he means it. The legendary producer behind hits for Madonna, David Bowie, Diana Ross, and even Daft Punk's Get Lucky, has repeatedly said that the 30-second fake commercial from Coming to America is one of his greatest compositions. The story began in 1987 when director John Landis called Rodgers out of the blue. Landis admitted he didn't even know who Rodgers was. Someone had simply told him he was some kind of genius. At the time, the movie was still titled The Zamunda Project, and Rodgers had just signed on to compose his first major orchestral film score. Writers David Sheffield and Barry Blaustein had come up with lyrics for a mock hair product ad originally called Afro Glow, later renamed to the catchier Soul Glow. Rodgers set the words to music and recruited rock singer Christopher Max to deliver that unforgettable falsetto. The result was a perfect parody of 1980s black hair care commercials, complete with dripping curls, slow-motion glamour shots, and Max's hilariously over-the-top vocals. It was meant to be a quick joke, but it became one of the most iconic moments in the film. For Rodgers, the Soul Glow jingle represented something deeper. He once said a jazz teacher taught him that even simple pop songs can touch millions of people, and Soul Glow, silly as it was, did exactly that. He's even performed it live, most recently during a 2023 NPR Tiny Desk concert, where the crowd erupted the moment the familiar tune began. A parody jingle may not seem like high art, but for Nile Rodgers, it's proof that great music connects, whether it's played in a stadium or in a fake hair commercial. Fact 22. The restaurant was actually a Wendy's for 3 weeks. The famous McDowell's restaurant from Coming to America, where Prince Akeem and Semi worked flipping burgers and chasing love, wasn't a Hollywood set at all. It was a real Wendy's in Queens, New York. Located at 8507 Queens Boulevard in Elmhurst, the fast food spot was transformed into the fictional McDowell's for 3 weeks during production in 1988. The crew completely redesigned both the interior and exterior, swapping out Wendy's logos for golden arcs, adding fake menu boards, new uniforms, and the unmistakable McDowell's signage. This wasn't just a quick background shot either. McDowell's served as one of the film's main locations, where much of the romantic story between Akeem and Lisa unfolded. It's where Akeem worked as a humble cleaner to win her heart, and where Samuel L. Jackson's unforgettable robbery scene took place. But shooting there came with its own drama. Because McDowell's so closely resembled McDonald's, the filmmakers had to get official permission from the fast food giant before using the parody name. Things got even messier when a nearby McDonald's franchise owner spotted the fake restaurant and threatened to sue, not realizing it was just a movie set. As for the real Wendy's, it's long gone. The building was eventually demolished to make room for a modern apartment complex. Today, nothing remains of McDowell's except the film itself, a nostalgic snapshot of 1980s Queens and one of the most memorable fake restaurants in movie history. Fact 23. Paula Abdul was only 18 when she choreographed. Before Paula Abdul became a pop icon, she was an ambitious 18-year-old choreographer trying to break into Hollywood. One of her very first major projects was Coming to America, where she was hired to design the film's elaborate African wedding dance sequences, years before she'd topped the charts as a singer and TV personality. At the time, Abdul was still working as a cheerleader and choreographer for the Los Angeles Lakers. She had just been promoted to head choreographer for the Laker Girls when director John Landis came calling. He'd specifically asked to work with the girl who choreographed Janet Jackson, referring to Abdul's groundbreaking work on Jackson's Control and Nasty music videos. When Abdul showed up for her meeting with Landis, she carried only a small briefcase filled with VHS tapes of her Laker Girl routines and Janet Jackson's videos, the entire sum of her professional portfolio. Landis was stunned by how young she looked. "What are you, 17?" he asked. When Abdul told him she was 19, almost 18, he hesitated, unsure if someone so young could handle choreography for a major motion picture. But Abdul didn't back down. She offered to stage a short workshop with dancers to prove herself, and when Landis saw her ideas in action, he hired her on the spot. She already knew Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall from Lakers games, though they had no idea she was the creative mind behind the halftime routines they loved. Abdul would later say that the Coming to America wedding sequence was one of the proudest moments of her career, a vibrant blend of African-inspired movement, storytelling, and rhythm that helped set the tone for the entire film. The success of her choreography not only cemented her reputation in Hollywood, but also paved the way for her meteoric rise as one of the biggest pop stars of the early 1990s. Fact 24. A multi-million-dollar lawsuit exposed Hollywood's unconscionable accounting. Art Buchwald's lawsuit against Paramount Pictures over Coming to America became one of the most significant legal battles in Hollywood history, not just because he won, but because it pulled back the curtain on the shady accounting tricks studios used to avoid paying writers and actors their fair share. Buchwald, a Pulitzer Prize-winning humorist, filed the suit in 1988, claiming Paramount had stolen his idea and turned it into Eddie Murphy's hit comedy without credit or payment. 5 years earlier, in 1983, Buchwald had sold the studio a 3-page treatment titled King for a Day. It told the story of an African ruler who comes to America after being overthrown and gets caught up in a series of comic misadventures. Paramount spent 2 years and $500,000 developing multiple drafts based on Buchwald's concept, only to shelve the project in 1985. 2 years later, the studio began production on Coming to America, a film with an undeniably similar premise: an African prince traveling to the U.S. in search of a new life and unexpected love. The first phase of the trial determined whether Coming to America had been based on Buchwald's story. In January 1990, Judge Harvey Schneider ruled in Buchwald's favor, confirming that Paramount had indeed used his treatment as the foundation for the film. He made it clear that the ruling wasn't meant to discredit Eddie Murphy's creative input, but to hold Paramount accountable for breaking its agreement with Buchwald. The second phase of the case was even more explosive. When it came time to decide how much Buchwald should be paid, Paramount claimed that Coming to America, despite grossing over $288 million worldwide, had made no net profit under their accounting system. The judge called the studio's financial methods unconscionable and declared Buchwald's contract void, ruling that Paramount's profit-sharing formula was so deceptive it couldn't be legally enforced. Facing the threat of similar lawsuits from other creatives, Paramount quietly settled with Buchwald and his producing partner for $900,000, a relatively small payout, but a landmark victory that changed how Hollywood contracts were written and how studios were held accountable for profit manipulation. Fact 25. James Earl Jones and M. Sinclair played royalty twice. James Earl Jones and Madge Sinclair, who brought to life King Jaffe Joffer and Queen Aeolian of Zamunda in Coming to America, reunited 6 years later to play another royal couple in one of Disney's most iconic films. In 1994, the two lent their voices to Mufasa and Sarabi, the king and queen of Pride Rock in The Lion King, creating a rare and beautiful link between two very different stories of African royalty. This wasn't a coincidence. Disney's filmmakers were reportedly inspired by the regal chemistry Jones and Sinclair shared in Coming to America. Their commanding presence and natural warmth made them the perfect fit to portray the wise, noble rulers of the animal kingdom. Jones's deep, resonant voice became the soul of Mufasa, protective, powerful, and full of quiet strength, while Sinclair brought grace, compassion, and quiet authority to Queen Sarabi. Together, they gave The Lion King its emotional core. Interestingly, both films share deeper parallels. Each tells the story of a young African prince on a journey to define his identity, one searching for love and purpose in a foreign land, the other reclaiming his birthright after tragedy and exile. Both celebrate heritage, destiny, and the bond between parents and children. For Sinclair, these roles were part of a legacy she had already been building. Before either royal portrayal, she had earned acclaim for her role as Belle Reynolds in Roots, a performance that highlighted her ability to embody dignity and emotional depth. As for James Earl Jones, his unmistakable voice had already made cinematic history as Darth Vader, and yet, as both the King of Zamunda and the Lion King of Pride Rock, he cemented himself as Hollywood's ultimate symbol of power, wisdom, and timeless majesty. Coming to America wasn't just a comedy, it was a cultural milestone that redefined what a Hollywood blockbuster could look like. Decades later, its legacy still inspires filmmakers, comedians, and fans around the world. But here's the question. Which Coming to America secret surprised you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more untold stories and hidden truths from classic movies that shaped Hollywood history.